Welcome to the Lost Debate, a show for political eclectics. I'm Ravi Gupta, and in this episode, I'm just going to empty my notebook with some commentary on the news of the day. It's been a busy week. The big news of the week is that we have a nominee in Michigan, in Abdul El-Sayed, who eked out a win. Haley Stevens, his primary opponent, conceded, and Abdul accepted the concession quickly. There's a few notable things about this. One is just how wrong the polls were. So, some of these polls were plus 19, plus 16, plus 13, plus 16. El-Sayed saying that there's going to be a landslide. And he, won by 1 to 2 points, didn't even get above 50% because the 4% of the vote went to Mallory McMorrow, who had already dropped out. Another notable thing about this is that El-Sayed ran up the score with college-educated voters, actual college students in college towns, suburban voters, the people that Democrats tend to over-index on. And then he underperformed significantly with Black voters, rural voters, low-income voters, like what we call the quote-unquote working class voters, right? So if you go back to the autopsy of 2024, every single person was talking about, okay, we need to fix our problem with rural voters, the working class voters, Black and brown disaffected voters. So this is dangerous for a number of reasons. And I've been talking about this before this result, was that no matter who is going to emerge, they were going to have a hard time pulling together this coalition because it's late, right? It's in August, is one of the latest primaries. And it was such a nasty race. Haley Stevens would have had a hard time. Abdul El-Sayed's going to have a hard time. The polling suggested, if you trust any of it, which again, with all this, who knows what to trust, that Haley Stevens would have had a slightly better chance or was doing slightly better in the head-to-head polling against Rogers. But let's just say they both would have had a hard time. This is going to be tough for Abdul El-Sayed because he now needs to convince that 51% of people who didn't vote for him in the primary to support him. He's going to need every single one of them, and then he's going to have to do extremely well with independents. Here's what Mike Murphy had to say about this, the political strategist. He says, as seen before, the Bernie lefty revolution of workers, Dem in Michigan, isn't actually getting many blue-collar votes. Stevens is winning the grittier auto manufacturing areas. She has Flint, etc., while he has college towns in Ann Arbor and East Lansing. Troubling sign for the general. Mike Rogers, who's Abdul El-Sayed's opponent, wasted no time calling Abdul El-Sayed an extremist, Rogers saying he's running against someone who says America deserved 9/11. So there's this sort of transference because, Abdul El-Sayed has campaigned repeatedly with Hassan Piker, who did say America deserved 9/11 and actually put up a newsprint behind him, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, with 9/12 headline, kind of trolling people like me, I guess, who have a problem with his language on 9/11. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of whether he's apologized properly or not for this. There's a whole discourse there. But the point is, this is what the Rogers campaign is going to try to paint Abdul El-Sayed with, among other things like the defund the police stuff and all of that. And so it's up to Abdul to both pull together the coalition of the 51% of Democrats who didn't vote for him and then go after those independents. And the people around him are not doing him any favors here. I think Abdul, for the most part, since the election, has tried to tack towards the middle. That's very hard given the way he's conducted himself in the primary, but it is the right move as of this week for sure. I can say a lot about how he conducted himself in the primary, but post-primary, that's what you need to do. But the people around him, I don't think got the memo, including Hassan Piker. Here's a video of Hassan Piker from election night.
Everyone being Abdul has a fuck ton of work to do mending bridges. Here's the fucking take nuke for you, okay? You are all unbelievably Islamophobic pieces of shit, okay? You literally called the dude a fucking terrorist for months on end and called him a sexist, misogynist, terrorist, bad candidate, fake doctor when he has 2 fucking degrees. And now you're gonna sit there and be well, you really gotta come to me now. What are you talking about? Do you wanna fucking win or not? Lock the fuck in, okay? Lock the fuck in. And I do worry that there are some out there who, in an effort to make sure that this narrative that a progressive can win in a state like Michigan doesn't take root, will literally either subtly or, not so secretively endorse Mike Rogers or stay out of the race while, trying to push the excitement in the opposite direction.
So there's a couple of things going on here. Number one, there's a bit of schadenfreude, these Hassan Piker types, even Abdul himself, have either flirted with or explicitly joined this sort of uncommitted ranks, not voting for either Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, et cetera. And so there's definitely some karma at play here. But obviously, if you're just an interested actor who doesn't care about score settling, which I think hopefully we all are, you want to treat this independently, right? You don't want to be like, okay, let me stick it to these people who didn't close ranks behind us. But I do forgive people for being a bit frustrated by this rhetoric of, okay, everybody closed ranks from groups of people who didn't. But there's no easy way to handle that, right? Like, this is a death spiral for people who call themselves Democrats if you then retaliate. So I'm sympathetic. I do know a lot of people in my life from Michigan, and I know a lot of people in my life who are loyal Democrats who are saying they're not going to vote for Abdul, or some even, including some friends of mine who are former Obama officials who are saying that, from Michigan, saying that they're going to actually vote for Rogers for the first time in a national election, voting for a Republican. So again, Abdul has his work cut out for him, and the people around him are doing him no favors. Again, Ben Rhodes from Crooked Media tweeted, Abdul is a Rhodes Scholar, public health administrator, an expert, and brilliant politician. What other than his identity in opposition to a blank check for Israel shared by most voters are you worried about? So he tweeted this before the election was called. So essentially he's saying, like, how could it be that you'd have any issues with him other than his identity or Israel? So you're either a Zionist, extremist, or a racist if you oppose Abdul. And I find this interesting because I wasn't an Abdul supporter. I don't live in Michigan, but I wouldn't have voted for him. I had many problems with Abdul. But I have written about this 2 weeks ago, and we could link to it in the show notes. I've come out and said explicitly I'm for cutting all aid to the Middle East, whether that's Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the Emirates, or Israel. And I lay out my case in Substack. People could read that or not. So in terms of the consequences of my beliefs, I'm to the left of Ben Rhodes on Middle East policy. So it couldn't be that my issue with Abdul is that I'm some kind of crazed Zionist. I'm also a brown person and browner than Ben Rhodes. So it would be weird if I somehow am voting against or criticizing Abdul out of some deep-seated hatred of brown people. And by the way, I've had Abdul al-Sayed on stage multiple times with me at arena summits, the events I've held, and I've interviewed him on podcasts before. So it must be some late conversion to racism for me. Let's cut the identity politics, right? There are plenty of reasons why people would have an issue with Abdul al-Sayed outside of any of the reasons Ben mentioned. Like for me, his nonsensical education policies, for example, or his parade of promises to expand all kinds of programs, but then also say he's going to eliminate property taxes for seniors. So it's like this kind of magic math, right? Like, and we're packaging that as courage, right? To be like, I'm courageous because I'm saying we're going to give free healthcare to everybody and expand education funding and blah, 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 blah. But I'm also, you're not going to pay taxes. So we want a European welfare state without the European taxes. So that to me is offensive and silly and disingenuous. Never mind spending time with and trafficking in some of the ideas that the people like Hassan Piker have trafficked in, even outside of the Israel stuff, right? The 9/11 stuff. Having somebody who's pro-Russia and pro-China and repeatedly campaigning with that person and not being willing to criticize that person, that kind of stuff matters to me and other people. So the people around him, whether it's Ben Rhodes, whether it's Hassan Piker, are not doing Abdul any favors. He needs to distance himself from those types of people. And then we got tweets from people like Amanda Littman, who runs Run for Something. She said Abdul is going to win in part because people fundamentally don't trust the Democratic establishment anymore. Right. So this is the line from Amanda and from the people at Crooked Media and people like that. This is an anti-establishment push. You're going to get sick of me saying this. But again, Amanda Littman for a decade has run most robust candidate recruitment and support organization in the Democratic Party. She has an open door on the major podcasts and venues within the Democratic Party. She's a fellow at the University of Chicago Institute of Politics that Axelrod runs. She is as establishment as they come. Ben Rhodes is as establishment as they come. Jon Favreau is as establishment as they come. They're both part of the old establishment and the new establishment of these podcasters who I've talked about on this podcast, who work in unison. They generally endorse the same candidates, and those endorsements matter. And the reason why we know they matter is because all these people raise money, whether it's raising money for their organizations or raise capital for their media companies, explicitly telling investors that we have influence within the party, which makes sense because, if you take, for instance, Crooked Media, they have millions of listeners. Of course they have influence. But when their candidates emerge or they're on the hook for something like Plattner, who they all supported, even as terrible allegations were coming out, and they only abandoned him when the worst of the worst allegations came out. they throw up their hands and they blame Chuck Schumer and the DNC and the third way, right? And they talk about some, Potemkin establishment or diminished organizations that don't have any power within the Democratic Party or very little power anymore within the Democratic Party. This is the establishment. These people don't want the accountability, though, for their own decisions. And, one very interesting test case of this will be next week in Wisconsin. There's a primary. And as of August 2nd, the GOP was favored to win Wisconsin's governor's mansion for the first time. Why? Because one of the primary candidates, the leading candidate for Democrats right now is this woman, Francesca Hong, who's had a series of bizarre appearances. She is of this chevalier mode of person with very little important life experience who seems to say a lot of awful and out of touch things. Here are just two examples. She was asked this week the very tough question of whether she would cancel Thanksgiving. Let's take a listen.
You talked about your past positions that he keeps highlighting and, obviously likely would continue to do so before November should you win. One thing that they brought up as well was a post from you in 2021 where you said Americans should cancel Thanksgiving, should have done this in 1621. The post has been deleted. Republicans have been highlighting it. Do you still believe that Thanksgiving should be canceled?
I'm a chef, and one of the first meals that I made that was for the community when I was 16 was a Thanksgiving meal. I always think my hospitality background in owning a restaurant for 7-8 years, that bringing folks around the table to share conversation and build community is always a good thing. But Thanksgiving is also a time that's incredibly painful for many people in our communities. And so I think I wanted to make sure that people understood that there are multiple views, but views can evolve. And the position that I'm running for right now, and I think my background as a chef, will actually help me become a better governor that's able to bring more people to the table.
Francesca Hong, thank you for joining us. We hope to have you back on, depending on how things go next week in your primary.
So for me, it's one thing if you're running for, state assembly in Williamsburg, right? I'm still going to have an issue because that's over the bridge for me with this kind of talk. But if you're trying to run for governor of Wisconsin, and you're in the final weeks of the primary and you're talking like that. And by the way, also, of course, you don't even need me to say it, welcoming Hassan Piker in while you have double-digit lead, right? You're not in any way pivoting towards your general election message here. I have questions about how that's going to how that's going to fly in a state like Wisconsin. If you didn't think that was enough, the way she has described women is she calls them birthing people, which I beg you to ask yourself, how many people in everyday life have you heard talk like that? And then she had this video, this is from a few years ago, where she's talking about her experience as a wife and mother of biracial children. Take a listen.
I wasn't always aware of the struggles of other communities of color because for me, assimilation always kind of took over. And so I did marry my proximity to whiteness continues, right? My son is biracial. He's half white and half Korean. And I think navigating, what his identity is and how people perceive him is always at the back of my mind as well.
Okay, so I'm half white and I tweeted this, like if my mom started talking like this, we would get her checked for a stroke. Like no normal person talks like this. Proximity to whiteness. As Charles W. Cook tweeted, if Francesca Hong is uncomfortable with proximity to whiteness, I'd strongly advise her against becoming the governor of Wisconsin. Very white state. What are we doing? And this is the bullshit detector for you. Like the crooked media folks had her on their podcast. And if you watch that interview, you had Jon Favreau interviewing her like an attorney trying to what they call rescue the witness, like resuscitate the witness is I think that is what it's called, or what you lawyers can correct me on my term, revive the witness or whatever. It's when you have somebody who has been cross-examined and absolutely eviscerated. And if you watch a lot of Law and Order or whatever, you know what I'm talking about. And then their lawyer has to come on and start asking you some questions to get you to like dig yourself out of whatever hole you're in. And she did a horrible job even on that very friendly venue of digging herself out of a hole. And again, like the way you need to treat this is compare those moments to how, for instance, Dean Phillips was treated when he had the temerity to run against Joe Biden. in the very description of the episode that Crooked Media put up about Dean Phillips, I think they called it a heated conversation or something like that with Dean Phillips. They gave him the full Tim Russert treatment, very exacting. Whereas in this case, they're like pining for her to like in some way fix her answers. And at a certain point, if I'm interviewing her, I'm like, let me just stop you there. Like, are you serious? Like, why are you talking about this now? You got an election in a week and then a general election in no time. Like, what do you think somebody in rural Wisconsin is thinking when they hear you talking like this? And so this is kamikaze behavior from Democrats, kamikaze behavior. And I think it is a bullshit detector test for you to ask people in your lives who are involved in Democratic politics what they think about these things. And if what they give you is just mayonnaise, gray goo, nonsense platitudes, and they're not able in concrete terms to say, oh yeah, this is a problem that we need to solve. If they can't be that clear, they have no business being anywhere near any of this stuff. Again, and these are the people who are either supporting her, trying to revive her, the people who supported Abdul. These are the people who continue to support Nglas Platner. Most of them didn't apologize for that role and now have turned around and are playing kingmaker in future races. And we need accountability in the party. You know, I'll read something for you that I just put on my Substack earlier today. I said, and this is in relation to the lack of accountability in the Democratic Party. I said, orchestrate a weekend at Bernie's presidency and attack anyone who calls you on it. Land a cush job as chief legal officer at Airbnb. That's Ron Klain, former chief of staff to Biden. Pluck a liar and rapist from obscurity and nearly tank Dem chances of taking back the Senate. Don't apologize. Play kingmaker for the next race. Favreau, Tommy, those guys. Spend a decade recruiting and endorsing candidates. When the pool produces criminally out-of-touch nominees, blame an amorphous establishment you are obviously not a part of. Amanda Littman, run for something. And then I said, produce historically poor results for poor kids. When lockstep raises, early retirement and more job protections. Obviously, I'm talking about teachers and the teachers union. That's the modern Democratic Party and accountability, right? That's what we're dealing with. Now, if you're listening to this, I haven't forgot about Republicans. One of the reasons why I don't spend as much time talking about Republicans here is that I have majority 54, where I spend the vast majority of my time calling out the issues over there, which I would say I don't use the term both sides because I do not think there's an equivalence here. I think one side is far worse than the other here, but I won't go too much into that. But I'll give you an exhibit of just one of the many things I would normally talk about on another podcast, but that just makes me almost hopeless for what's happening on the Republican side. And that's this Max Miller controversy. This is a member of the House of Representatives who has multiple allegations of the worst possible behavior, pouring hot water on his wife, putting a gun to her head. He's possible he broke his 2-year-old daughter's collarbone, assault allegations against multiple women. I'm going to give you an extended clip of his exchange with Jake Tapper just to give you a sense of where we are on this.
Here's the thing. You're talking about a level of standard of proof that has to do with judges, and there is separately a different level when it comes to what kind of behavior is tolerated among public officials, because there are now three women who have accused you of violent behavior. Politico published a report in 2021 that says when you were in high school, you, quote, pushed a girl out of the dorm of his room and she fell down some stairs after he became enraged when she resisted his attempts to touch her, according to 3 people who were there and many more who heard about the incident in the aftermath. Now, you deny that, but the woman in question told Mother Jones reporter Abby Vasulis just days ago that it happened and was, quote, one of the more traumatic nights of her life. Now,
I would love for that individual to go on the record because that.
Okay.
Jake, I was
hold on, because I'm not done with the list of women that have accused you of violence. Then there is former White House press secretary. Okay, you were young. Then there's former White House press secretary Stephanie Grisham, who was your ex-girlfriend. She accused you of being abusive and having a violent streak. She wrote in her book, quote, I could do nothing right by him. I would wake up every morning shaking with anxiety about his mood that day. I had seen his temper before, and it had scared me, unquote. She has recently filed a temporary restraining order against you in a defamation case. And now there are these claims from your ex-wife, Emily Marino. And I guess the question is, are all 3 of these women who don't know each other, are all 3 of them lying?
Yes, it's very easy, and I can tell you why. Every single time, and people have asked me, you know, what are you going to do? Are you going to drop out of this race? Are you going to resign? You know, are you going to get out before the deadline? And my answer to you, Jake, is no. And I can tell you why. In 2016, when President Donald J. Trump faced the most extreme allegations in the world that hit him day after day after day, and people in the media, very much like yourself and others, said that he would have no shot at winning, that he should not be the President of the United States. But guess what? He stayed in and he was resilient. And what the American people can see is that they can see that somebody is fighting who is resilient, and that is a quality that the American people cherish. And so for no second am I going to sit here and continue to be debased by false and baseless allegations and be pushed out of a seat I have worked so hard to represent and done a terrific job for our community. You know, my record in Congress on the Ways and Means and House Foreign Affairs and bringing back money for our district and standing up for the Ukrainian people and also voting to protect Obamacare during this entire time. This is why no one's attacking me on my policy, Jake, because they can't. I've been a good legislator. All they're trying to do is create rumor mills without evidence. It's all hearsay.
So here you have it. Miller is explicitly citing the example of Trump and all the allegations against him. And interestingly, Abdul al-Sayed, when asked about Hassan Piker, did the same thing, saying, look at what Trump gets away with. And is it Trump's fault that these people are doing horrible things? No. But does his behavior as the most powerful, prominent person in our American life and the impunity that he has, does that matter? Does that give people cover to do crappy things? I think it does. And Trump and Mike Johnson both had an opportunity, and Republican leaders had opportunities to draw a line in the sand here and didn't. Let's start with Trump. This is what he had to say about Miller.
You were asked yesterday whether Representative Max Miller should resign from Congress of the allegations, and you said that you'd have a look at it.
Yeah.
Have you thought about that? And also, do you think
Well, it's a very sad thing. I know Max. He's a good person. I mean, I always thought he was a very good person. And I'm going to let the families figure that out. You know, those families, I know they're working on it. It's a very sad thing, especially when you know somebody so well, to be going through that. But it's accusations, and I'm going to let them figure that out.
He's a very good person. I mean, how is this not like front page scandal that he said this about this guy? Like, let me remind you, one of the accusers is a former staff member, high profile staff member of Trump's. The other is the daughter of Republican Senator Bernie Moreno. Okay, those are two of the accusers. And we're also talking about abuse of a child. The fact that our president can't draw a line in the sand. Like, look, a lot of you listen to this and you cheer when I call out the problems that Democrats exhibited with Plattner and all this kind of stuff. But one thing that happened there was, in the end, Plattner was jettisoned. Now, if you listen to this, you know I have tons and tons of problems of how long it took and how we got there, but he was jettisoned. Meanwhile, we have this guy who has all these horrible allegations, and the Republicans are sticking by him. Mike Johnson had very little to say, too. Let's go to his clip.
Miller's ex-wife said he poured hot water on her, held a gun to her head, broke their daughter's collarbone. Miller has, of course, denied these allegations. But today he said on CNN that you are, quote, standing behind him. Are you?
I haven't spoken to Max in a few days. I've been traveling nonstop and haven't had an opportunity to do that. I think what Max is suggesting there is that I've been intellectually consistent, always have, since before I became Speaker, and certainly over the last almost 3 years. This applies equally to Republicans and Democrats. We don't take disciplinary action against members for allegations. He is vehemently denying this. It's, in his own words, a nasty divorce proceeding, and it's gotten ugly and it's gotten public. But he's saying the same things privately to members that he is publicly, that he denies all this and he thinks it's a hit job on him.
Will you tell him to drop out?
No, I will tell Max what I tell everyone. These are serious allegations. I'm the father of two daughters who work in Capitol Hill. I mean, the allegations are serious. I think Max is taking them seriously. I think our colleagues are. But again, we have to allow this process to play out. It's just begun.
I mean, the president called him. Max Miller said this, that the president called him and told him, you know, things aren't looking good for you.
Well, I mean, they don't look good right now, of course. But again, like, what should a speaker do in this case? I mean, I call out alarming behavior. I try to work every day on decorum and on the ethics of the House. We have a very active and engaged ethics committee. They've done more work than they need to. I wish it wasn't necessary, but there's been a lot in this Congress on both sides of the aisle.
Well, there we have it. I don't even have to tell you to go look at what these people say about people like Plattner and what Democrats should do in those circumstances, or the many members that they've called on to resign for things well short of this. And yes, like taking disciplinary action officially through House channels involves some some semblance of due process. You should probably have more to say about how you think that needs to happen urgently. But also you can do things outside of the process. We do it all the time and say, look, to officially remove him, we got to go through those channels. But why don't you make it easy on all of us and resign now, right? Why don't you do that? Just resign. This is what happened with Swalwell, and this is what happened with Plattner. Just make it easy. Resign. And you should be able to say that. And certainly, you compare it to Trump, don't say that he's a nice guy. Have more to say about that. You're the most powerful people in the world. And you're also supposed to be these, masculine, protecting women and children. We keep having evidence now that, when it's your power at stake or you have to make difficult choices, are we standing up for women and children? Why is Ghislaine Maxwell in Club Fed right now? Why is Jim Jordan still in the House of Representatives? Why is Max Miller still in the House of Representatives and seems stridently in a re-election campaign? So for you folks on the other side of the aisle there, I haven't forgot about you. I know some of you get sensitive when I attack Trump or Republicans, but you cheer when I go after Democrats. It's look, I'll give you the floor. Send me a voice message or an email in any way defending this and Max Miller. And I promise you, I will read your defense and address it on air. If you think that I'm somehow missed something here, I will give you your day. Send me a note. Without further ado, I think that's it. Have a great weekend, everybody. Remember to rate, review, subscribe. Again, if you haven't yet, pre-order The Invisible List wherever you get your books, and you could send that pre-order receipt to Alexis at orangeboatmedia.com if you want to join our posse of people who are learning our new hobbies, passions, and skills before the book even comes out. I'll see you next week.